Our
Going
page
live.
called
Okay.
Knesset.
We are on now.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so we're on the KBI page. Oh, I don't see it yet.
It says redirecting now. Should be live now. Should be on there.
Okay, here we go. Perfect. Okay, so now if you share it from there,
Trying to find that. Oh, I see it. Okay.
There it is.
what's your? Do you guys want to wait for people to come, or?
I don't know where everybody is, but
Okay, maybe no one's gonna come. Maybe it'll just be us.
could be. We've never done a shiur at 10:45 before, but we'll try.
Okay.
Give everybody 2 minutes, I guess.
Okay, so there are people watching on Facebook, so I think we should start.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Rabbi Pilichowski, for offering us this opportunity of learning during Chol Hamoed, and appreciate having you virtually here locally. Thank you very much for doing this.
My pleasure, my absolute pleasure. Okay, what I am going to do is I'm going to share the link to the Myra Komos. And if anybody wants to follow the source sheets, they can. I'll put it in the chat here. And then if anybody wants to post it on Facebook, you can. There you go. Okay, so that's the source sheet there in the chat. And I'm going to post it on my comments so that people can see it. And then if you guys want to take it, you can also. Okay. So we're going to look at an interesting topic. I find it interesting. And I'm going to just open up by asking a few questions that trouble me about the festival of Sukkot. And the first question I have is really, what are we celebrating? Most festivals that we have, we celebrate some event, right? So on Pesach, we celebrate the Exodus from Egypt. On Shavuot, we celebrate the giving of the Torah. Rosh Hashanah, we celebrate creation and judgment, right? If judgment can be something that's celebrated, it should be if we understand it properly, but not everybody takes that way. But at least there's something happening. There's some sort of event that's going on. Yom Kippur is all about forgiveness. So we're commemorating and we're interested in making sure that we're forgiven. So we do actions that are all about forgiveness. Hanukkah and Purim are pretty obvious. There's salvation from our enemies on both those days. But what's Sukkot all about? There's no event that occurred on Sukkot. So what's the big deal about Sukkot? Why are we having a festival that nothing happened on the festival starts on the 15th of the Jewish month of Tishrei? Nothing happened on the 15th of the Jewish month of Tishrei. So if nothing occurred, why are we happy, right? So why are we having a festival? That's my first question. My second question, and here if you're following the source sheet, so we're going to look at a halacha that the Rambam quotes. This is the Rambam in Hilchos Sukkah, and the Rambam asks the following: says, "Keitzad hi mitzvahs hayeshiva b'sukkah." How does one fulfill the mitzvah of living in a sukkah? So he says, "Shia ocha v'shoseh v'dar b'sukkah kol shivas hayamim bein bayom bein b'layla." So a person should live. He should live. He should eat. He should drink. He should live in the sukkah all 7 days, day and night. Right? So just like he lives in his house, the rest of the year. Right? So all 7 days, his house becomes like a shed, right? Becomes like the guest house in the back. right? That's not where he lives. Vesukasal keva, and his sukkah is where he is the entire day. That's where he should be. Right now that we're all home all day long. I don't know about in Richmond, but in Israel we're locked down in our houses, so we're really in the sukkah all day long. Right? It says that you live in your sukkah for 7 days. How so? Kalim hanoim, right? Your nice dishes, right? There's not you don't bring out the paper goods, right? You're really supposed to bring out the nice dishes to the sukkah. I don't know how many people we do this properly, but right here, you bring out the good glassware, the china comes out, right? That's what we're supposed to bring out to the sukkah. Right? And if you bring lights out into the sukkah, and if your sukkah is too small, so you could keep some of the stuff outside the sukkah, right? You imagine like a sort of a staging area that you have outside the sukkah. If your sukkah is too small to have everything in, but really everything should be inside the sukkah. And this leads me to my next question. The first question we had was when it comes to all other chagim, all other festivals. So there's some event that we're celebrating. When we talk about those festivals, it's interesting. There's always a mitzvahs hayom. There's always some sort of mitzvah that comes with the festival, right? We don't get away for free. We're not just partying. We always have some sort of mitzvah that we do. So let's go through it like we did the first time, right? So we said that when it comes to Pesach, right? So Pesach we celebrate the Exodus, and what do we do to celebrate? So we have matzah and wine, right? We have some sort of right? We have matzah and wine. Okay, great. So that's how we celebrate Pesach. When it comes to right, that's how we celebrate freedom, right? The freedom of the event of the Exodus. We have matzah and wine. When it comes to Shavuot, we have cheesecake. Just joking, right? So we study Torah all night long, right? That's what we do to celebrate, right? We got the Torah on Shavuos, and the custom has become that we do it in the best way. What's a better way to celebrate receiving the Torah than studying the Torah? So we spend all night long studying the Torah. On Rosh Hashanah, right? So what's the mitzvah of the day of Rosh Hashanah? The mitzvah of the day is that we blow shofar. Shofar awakens us to tshuva, right? We're supposed to repent with our, right? That's the call of the shofar, awakens us to repent. So that's the idea for right when it comes to the to Rosh Hashanah, right? The mitzvah relates directly to the event that we're having. Judgment, tshuva, all comes to Rosh Hashanah, comes to the shofar. Yom Kippur, right? Yom Kippur, again, we said that we're focused on forgiveness. So what do? We fast. We pain ourselves, right? How does fasting and painting ourselves help? So it helps because what it does is that it focuses our mind, right? We're no longer thinking about, what time is lunch? What are we going to have for lunch? Okay, we're not having lunch. So we might as well focus on what we're here for, which is to reconnect with God, confess our sins, and gain forgiveness. So Yom Kippur has a mitzvah of the day. It's an interesting one. It's pain, but it has a mitzvah of the day that directly relates to forgiveness. And in the times of a real Yom Kippur, when hopefully this coming Yom Kippur, when we're in the temple in the Beit HaMikdash in Jerusalem, right? That's what we say at the end of the year, every year in Yom Kippur. We end with L'Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim HaBnuyah back in, right? So then Yom Kippur, the mitzvah of the day, is this whole service that the Kohen Gadol does, the Avodas Hayom, and that really relates to gaining forgiveness. So that's on Yom Kippur, okay? Makes sense to us on Yom Kippur. The next thing in our list, right? Hanukkah, right? So Hanukkah, we're celebrating a miracle of the military victory and the salvation and the miracle that occurred in the temple with the candles. So what do? We light oil candle. We light oil. We commemorate the miracle directly with an action that relates to it, okay? And it's very easy to see. And on Purim, what do? Right? We retell the story of the miracle that occurred on Purim. So it all makes sense to us. But what are we left with? What's the question that we have? Right? So what about Sukkot? Right? So what's the mitzvah of Sukkot? The mitzvah is we sit in a sukkah and we wave 4 species. Okay, well, there's no event to commemorate. So what do these mitzvahs relate to? How do we get to these mitzvahs? That's that's my second question. So again, just to opening up our question is, all festivals somewhat relate to an event, except for Sukkot. Sukkot doesn't relate to any event. And all festivals, the mitzvah of the festival relates to the event that it celebrates. So it's very easy to see why we have those mitzvahs. No one sits on Pesach and says, I don't understand why I'm eating matzah. Everybody gets it. Everybody knows, right? We're eating matzah because that's what we ate in Mitzrayim. That's what we ate in Egypt. So, but now I sit in my sukkah and I say, what is this? Why am I living this way? Why am I here for 7 days? Why am I weaving these four species? Why do I have an etrog? What do I have a lulav for? What's the point of this, right? And then what does it relate to? Well, there was no event in the first place. So what are these mitzvahs coming to do? So Sukkot like stands on its own in this unique sort of paradox of I don't understand what this is all about. I don't understand why we're doing this. So those are my questions. Okay. Now the good thing is that we have answers, right? These are not my answers. We have better answers. So we have if you're following the source sheets, which are in the chat and in the comments below, so you can see that we're going to look at the tour now in source number 2. This is a very well-known tour. Okay, this is a very well-known comment that he makes, and he opens up his halachot of the Sukkah with this comment, and every word is like it's beautiful. This is like it's better than a good meal. This tour, you can take this tour and you can spend really all of Sukkot just reading this tour over and over, get a real enjoyment out of just the words of the tour. I'm picturing the tour writing this in his Sukkah. And just he's got his quill and his ink, and he's just living every word of this he loves. Listen to this story. You'll love this. He says, "Sukkos teishu shivas yamim." Right? We live in the Sukkah for 7 days. Okay. Leman yedu doroseichen ki b'sukkos hoshavti es b'nei Yisrael b'olseisios right. So he says that why are we doing this? So that all generations will know. Right. This is going to us 800 years after he writes this. That Bnei Israel sat in booths in Sukkot. This is what we lived in, right? When we took us out of Mitzrayim. Right? So Sukkah is directly related to the Exodus from Egypt, because when we left Egypt and we went into the desert, we lived in these Sukkot. V'chein harvei mitzvos, and this isn't the only one, right? We have a lot of mitzvos that relate to the Exodus. L'fishu davar sharinu beinenu. These are things that we saw with our own eyes. Ubaznenu shamanu. We heard it with our ears. No one can tell us this didn't happen. We all know we left Egypt, right? This happened to everybody. This wasn't one person. This happened to everybody. Now, this is amazing. This episode comes to demonstrate the reality and the conviction that there is a creator. Shehu bar hakol, that he created everything for his own will. And he could do whatever he wants in the heavens and on the earth. God has the ability to be able to do whatever he wants and does so based on what he wants to do. And no one's telling God what to do. This is what we saw. He took us out of Egypt, but also with miracles and wonders. Okay, right? Now, what are these sukkahs? Here's the curveball that he throws. Right. At first, he said these are the booths that we lived in. Now he says, no, Haim anane kavodo. These are the clouds that shekifon behem, lebal yaka behem. Right. So that when we walk through the desert, right. Sometimes we have this image in our minds of the beating down sun. I live in a desert. Right. I live in the Judean desert. So I can tell you, it can get hot here. Right, so I'm picturing walking through a desert. Right, that's not what happened. They had a different experience altogether. What happened with them? They walked through, and there was a cloud surrounding them. Okay, so right, so they had this cloud that was all around them, and it protected them. Right, so no one was able to attack them. Sharov shemesh, right, so right, the sun didn't affect them. But dugma zet sivanu aso sukkah, right, and now God tells us we should have Sukkot. Kadesha Niskor, right? Kadesha Niskor Niflosav and Norosav. So in order to remember the wonders that God performed for us. Right? So now we'll ask the obvious question. Wait a minute. So why don't we sit? Why don't we let's save some money here, save some time. Let's do Pesach and Sukkot the same week, right? We left Pesach and Nisan in the spring. So let's do this all at the same time. Make it much easier. Right? So he says, right? Also, I said no, because then it's sunny out and it's easier, and everybody does a sukkah for shade at that time in the spring. And people aren't going to realize that the reason why we're doing this is for a mitzvah. People are going to say, of course we're eating outside. It's nice in the springtime, so we want to eat outside, right? So no, that's not the idea. Right? We do it now, Chodesh Hashvi, right? Because this is a lot of places. This is the rainy season. So generally, people say, okay, it's time to pack up it's the fall now. It's getting a little chilly. This is when we generally pack up the outdoor stuff. We cover the barbecue and we go inside for the rest of the winter season, right? So no, what do we do? Right? Instead, where you say, we do the opposite. We leave the house. And everybody says, what are the Jews doing? We're doing this because this is the commandment of the king. Okay, so now we've got ourselves a ballgame, right? Because now what's the Torah saying? No, there is an event. You misunderstood. There is an event. The event that Sukkot celebrates is the same event Pesach celebrates. It's the Exodus from Egypt, and there are many mitzvot that celebrate this. So this is something that you misunderstood. But just because on the calendar date nothing happened doesn't mean that there wasn't an event that we have to celebrate. So there is an event that we have to celebrate, and that's perfectly fine. So that's the idea of what we're celebrating. And now we can understand and we can ask the question, right? So he seemed to be a little confusing. On the one hand, he said that we have the Sukkot, and this is obviously, we know that this is a debate in the Gemara, right? This is the ABCs of Sukkot, that we know that there's a debate. Are the Sukkot in commemoration of the Sukkot that we sat in the desert? Or is it like the Torah had said at the end of his words, that it's the clouds that protected us the cloud that protected us while we were in the desert, right? That's so my question is on the Torah, are those two separate interpretations like they are in Gemara? Is that what the Torah is saying? Or are these one thing? Is this one thing that's related to each other? That's my question on the Torah. So now we're up to 3 questions. Okay, let's now what's this cloud? Let's talk about this cloud because there's a lot of confusion about this cloud. People think it's a full service air conditioning system, like the first one ever. You went into it was always like a nice 70 degrees. Very chill, and but there's what was the cloud? So let's look at some of the sources here. We're going to look at source number 3. Source number 3 is a pasuk, and it says, "V'Hashem holech lefnehem yomam ba'amud hanan lanchosam hadarach v'layla ba'amud ha'esh lahir la'am lechas yomam v'layla." So it says that Hashem walked when they were in the desert. Hashem walked in front of the Jewish people. They with an amud anan, with like a pillar of a cloud. To show them the way, right? We follow this cloud. We look up, and you have 3 million people walking through the desert. They look up in the desert and they see this cloud, right? Bamuda Eish, right? At night they see this pillar of fire, right? So lahir lahem alechas yom v'layla, to show them which way to go at night. So this is the cloud. So look what the Rashbam says, because it seems the pasuk says that it was Hashem that walked in front of them, and then the pasuk says there's a cloud. So which one was it? So the Rashbam says Hashem halech. He says Malach shehaya molich lifnei Yisrael amuda ha'esh v'amud anan. So he throws in something else. He says no, it was an angel. There was an angel there. So now we've got God, angel, and cloud. Those that are walking in front of Bnei Yisrael as they go through the desert. So the Rashbam it confuses us a little. The Ibn Ezra says Hashem halech lifneihem hu malach. This was the angel. The angel. This is the angel. Rabbeinu Bechaya is going to help us. He says as follows. He says, Hashem holech lefnehem yomam al das pshat. This is according to the simple pshat. He says, this is the almost literal way of understanding the pasuk. God does not walk, right? We know that God doesn't walk. God is not a physical being. Physical beings walk. God doesn't walk. Bir hakasav kan mashi yamud anan holech lefnehem yomam v'nchosam hadarach v'layal munay shlaher lehem. So what were these? What was the cloud and the fire? It was the greatest of all signs. It was a sign that allowed the Jewish people to know that God was protecting them. Right? The Jews are walking in the desert. I mean, you can imagine the trauma of leaving slavery, right? And now the unknown and the uncertain of what's in front of them. it was probably a very confusing, very anxious and difficult time, right? They don't know what's going to be in front of them. Moshe's taking them out. They don't have a very long relationship with Moshe. They've known him for a year. Some of the older people might remember a younger Moshe growing up as a prince in the palace of Paro. But this is not the, they're not walking out. At some points they were celebrating, but at some points, I'm sure, and we see that during their time in the desert, they rebelled at certain times. They got angry at Moshe at other times. They didn't listen, right? This was not a confident people that were coming out of Egypt. So what gave them this confidence? They would look up, and at night, probably the time of the greatest fear was late at night. They would see this pillar of fire, and during the day they would see this amazing cloud, and they would say, "Okay, you know what? That's not normal. That doesn't happen. That never happened to us in Egypt. That doesn't usually happen to us. This is something this is unusual. This is very, very unusual. So this is something that what's happening and what's this miracle? This tells us that God is on our side. Okay, so that's an impressive thing, and that's really what was happening. It was telling the Jewish people that God is with them. Okay. There's also a very practical side to this cloud, though, and this is we see another pasuk in Shmos. This is source number 7. If you're following along on the sheet, and source number 7 says as follows. It says, "Vayisa ma'ach kim ha'olech lefnei machane Yisrael, vayelech ma'achorehem v'lo amura anan mipneihem v'yamur achorehem." Right. So the pasuk is similar. Pasuk is a cloud all around them, be front of them, back of them. Rashi says, "Lahavdil bein machane Mitzrayim u'bein machane Yisrael." Right, to separate, to distinguish. This is right before the splitting of the sea. The cloud was the boundary between the Jewish camp and the Egyptian camp, right? The Egyptians are chasing them. They're coming up. So, right. So this is a time that they're probably very, very nervous. And where was the line? Where did the Egyptians not come into the Jewish camp? So there was this cloud was protecting them. Look, haba chatzim. Okay. Will be shtratel shemitzrayim. So the Egyptians, right? They're not waiting around. They have orders. Go in, kill all these Jews. So, or at least catch them. So the Egyptians are firing their bows and arrows. The arrows are going in, and the cloud is catching the arrows. It's deflecting them, catching them. It's making sure that the arrows are not hitting their mark within the Jewish people. So there's a very practical side to this cloud. Okay. So when we ask ourselves, what was this cloud? And the cloud, again, relating back to our topic here of the Sukkah, right? So we ask, what's the cloud? So now we understand what the cloud was. The cloud served two purposes. Number one, it demonstrated to the Jewish people that God was protecting them. And number two, it showed that it protected them in a very practical way, utilitarian way. It protected them from the attacks of the Egyptians and making sure the Egyptians did not come near them. Okay, great. Everything's good. I'm assuming no one has any questions because this is going very smoothly. No one's interrupting. It's amazing. Okay, so great. So here we go. So now we're going to we'll look at an interesting question. The question is like this: is it really such a big deal that God was protecting the Jewish people? The whole Chumash, all of Tanakh, the entire Talmud is just stories of God protecting the Jewish people. We're the chosen people. We get a certain amount of protection. This seems to be something that is just comes our way. It's something almost automatic. This is something that we can rely on, and the fact that why did the Jewish people even need the cloud and the fire, right? They should have just expected it. They should have known. Okay, you're the Jewish people. You're going to be protected. You have nothing to fear. So why? Why do we have to celebrate this? This is just something that we have as a people. We are protected by God. We have a unique and special relationship with God. That is what the Jewish people are all about. So that should be something that we're happy about. Okay, but that's not really true. In the source sheet here, I'm not going to read through the whole thing. You have it in the source sheets. But the Rambam, in his Guide to the Perplexed, in the Moreh Nevuchim, the Rambam says that he talks about how you have the divine providence. And here we're going to explain a fundamental principle of divine providence. When it comes to divine providence, it is anything but automatic. God does not relate to man automatically. It doesn't make a difference if that person is Jewish, if that person is a Gentile. It is not something automatic. Divine providence is earned. I know that a lot of people think otherwise. A lot of people think that it's just, like walking down the street and I just happened to, trip, right? That was God. God just tripped me, right? So but that's not necessarily true. A person has to earn God's attention. King David, right? David HaMelech said, right? Ma an el shkitiskarenu. What is man that he should even be remembered or paid attention to by God? That God should even mention man, right? When we think about that for a minute, we're very self-centered people, and I don't mean individually, right? I mean as a species, we think the world revolves around us, that the whole universe revolves around us, and then we get into outer space and we realize there are entire galaxies that have nothing to do with mankind, and mankind has no influence on it whatsoever. And the we have to ask the question, if it doesn't have anything to do with us, so then why is it there? But in reality, our question should be, why are we here? Right? That should be our question. Right? We should think of ourselves as very lowly beings. Now, it might cause self-esteem issues, so you should realize the next part of this year, which is that we do have a way of earning God's attention. And that's through perfecting ourselves, through improving ourselves, through following God's commands, and through developing a relationship with God. It's reciprocal. The more we put into the relationship, the more God pays attention to us. And that's how divine providence works. That's how divine providence, how God relates to the world. It works on a system of merit. That's the idea. And if you look through Chumash, God says this right through the Torah all the time. If we do the mitzvos, then God will provide the rains. He'll provide a livelihood. He'll provide protection when we don't have anything to worry about. But if we don't, right? So we don't. This is some of the fundamental principles of our religion, right? And we say this. We say this every single day, twice a day. We are commanded on a Torah command to repeat this axiom, right, in our Shema. The second paragraph of Shema is all about divine providence. If you listen to my mitzvos, there's an if there, right? It's not guaranteed we're going to listen to the mitzvos, and it's not guaranteed that God's going to protect us, right? If you listen to the mitzvos, then the rains will come, and if the rains come, so then there will be food on the table. Today, unfortunately, we don't realize, right, that we are still dependent on rain. A lot of us think that we don't need rain, right? Rain is something that's that we wish goes away, but it's not, right? Yes, it's true. Our supermarkets are full of food on both rainy and non-rainy days, but there's a farmer out there, and that farmer is dependent on rain, right? So right, and our economies are greatly dependent on rain still to this day. And that rain is a bracha, is a blessing from God that only comes to us when we do the mitzvahs. That is the idea. So that's the idea of divine providence. And the cloud was something very unique, because here you had a people who did not merit divine providence. When they were in Egypt, they had separated, the Jewish people had separated from God. They had done all sorts of horrific things, from idolatry to sexual improprieties to all different types of sins. And they did not merit God's redemption. It was only when they did, as we say in the Pesach Haggadah, it's only when they turned to God and called out to God that God said, okay, now you're with me. Now I'm going to protect you. Now you're going to be my people. And that's what happened throughout the deserts. And that's what the clouds represented. Okay, great. So now let's take it to another part of the shiur. And if you look at source number 10, this is the Rashba. The Rashba talks about the uniqueness of the land of Israel. I'm standing right now in the land of Israel. I'm blessed to be in the land of Israel, to live here. And the Rashba calls, he says that this land is Eretz Chemda. It's the treasured land. Okay, and so what makes this land so special? Right, most of us don't even we don't think to the question. We think Eretz Yisrael is special because it's our land. It's the land where certain mitzvahs can be performed. But of all the lands in the world, what makes this land so unique? Is it its geographic location? What's all about this land? Right? Why is this land so special that God commands us to live here, and that it becomes the land of the Jewish people? And the answer to that question is, Einei Hashem Elokecha ba, right? That God's eyes are always on this land. Okay, as the Rashba says, V'chol inyanei haaretz b'hashgacha mito yisparach. Okay, to meet this, that God's providence is always on this land. When it comes to Richmond, Virginia is great, a historical place. We love Richmond. Richmond is an amazing place, but you should know God's not always watching over Richmond. So at times, it's just left to the ways of nature. There's a certain system that God put into place, and it goes by that system. There's no system here in Israel, right? Every single thing could happen, from one day to the next. It's all dependent on how we relate to God. It goes back to the system of divine providence. But God's eyes are always on this land, and as He's always checking, He's always making sure that the people in this land are doing are living their lives properly, are following the Torah. And that's why this land is so special, because it is the land of Hashgacha. It's the land of providence. And I'll give an example, but it's not an example, it's an analogy. It's a poor analogy. So just to understand that I'm not doing you such a great service here, but it is an analogy. If you have two students studying art, and one student studies art, and really they go visit museums and they study the art, and the other student does the same, and they end up with the same grades. They have the exact same grades. They finish the top of their class with the literally exact same grades. There's no differentiation between how they did. But one of the students is blind. Which of the two students knows art better? Right? That's to no fault of the blind person. Right? They didn't do anything wrong, but the student with vision, even though they both got the same grades, clearly has an advantage because they've experienced the art. You could have two scholars that study the same exact parts of the Torah. They understand it at the exact same level. They have the same amount of godless, of greatness in their Torah learning. But one of them gets a chance to experience the Hashgacha. That the divine, they might know it, they might not be aware of it, but they experience divine providence. They're going to understand God at a greater level because they have an experience of God. They've experienced the providence of God. That's something that you can't study in a book, right? And that's what Eretz Yisrael is. The land of Israel is being able, just by being here, to experience God. That's what's so unique, and that's why our rabbis told us, and we're commanded to be in this land. Right? Because we're supposed to, ideally. Now, it's not for everybody, and everybody has their own situation, so nobody should feel that they're doing something wrong. But it should be an aspiration for us to be in this land. Right? You can tell from my accent that I wasn't in this land my whole life. Right? So that's right. So that should be an aspiration that we should get to this land for the simple reason that we want to have the experience of divine providence. We want to make sure that our livelihood and our protection and our safety and our security are dependent on God and His providence to the land, and that's what makes Eretz Yisrael so special. The Rambam has a line. He says as follows, and with this, we're going to start drawing to our conclusion and answering our questions. Even though all the festivals, we have a mitzvah to be happy and to celebrate them. When it came to the Sukkot and the Beis HaMikdash, there was a greater simcha. Simcha Yisera, which I'm not sure if Rabbi Asher knows, but both of us married wives with the same name, Eliza. The explanation of Eliza in Sefer Yeshaya is Simcha Yisera. It means a greater form of Simcha. It's those same words. So Sukkot is the Chag of Eliza. It's the Chag of extra celebration, more so than Pesach and Shavuos. Right? As the pasuk says, Samachtem b'fnei Hashem Elokeichem shivas yamim. For 7 days, we're supposed to be happy. Because literally, right now, as we're sitting here, there's a mitzvah to be happier than at any other point of the year. Okay, so, and now it begs the question, what are we happy about exactly? So if you tell me it's the Exodus from Mitzrayim, so I'll tell you, well, hold on a second. Why is that any different than Pesach? That's what we're celebrating in Pesach also. And truth be told, when I put my tefillin on every single morning, I'm also celebrating the Exodus from Egypt. So I should be happy when I put my tefillin on. So why is it with Sukkah? So let's review our questions, and then we'll come to an answer. Our questions were, what exactly is Sukkah celebrating? Right. So we answered that partially. It's celebrating the Exodus from Egypt. Now we asked, why is the mitzvah of the day Sukkah? How does the Sukkah relate to the event? So now we understand that somewhat. And now we're asking finally, what is it about Sukkot that makes it happier than the other festivals? And the answer that I want to give is a comment of the Ibn Ezra, but this is a theme that you'll find throughout the Torah. I just found in the Ibn Ezra that he talks about that Sukkot is the time Chag HaAsif, right? In an agricultural society, right? Sukkot is the time where you gather in your crops. You harvest them throughout the spring, and you have them, and now you understand what you have, and you're going to live off of these crops, whether to eat from the actual crops or to sell them and barter them for other things. But this is your whole livelihood comes in right before Sukkot. And then Sukkot, you go to Yerushalayim. And if it's been a good year, and what I mean by a good year is you've made a great living, you have now a hoard of wealth to celebrate, right? This whole coming year with, right? You've made a good living, right? So again, this isn't like you're not going to be trading the whole entire year. This is your livelihood is right here and right now. So if you've done well and you've been blessed by God, and chances are you've been blessed by God because you've done the mitzvahs, this is an incredibly happy time, right? You tell your family, look, we're living it up this year, right? We did well on the crops. We had a great, that's what Sukkot is all about. But you'll say, hold on a second, that sounds very, very secular. That sounds very mundane. He's just celebrating money. He's celebrating the fact that no, the livelihood that you have in this land is dependent on God's blessing. And now we understand what Sukkot is all about. Just like when we were in the desert, the physical structures that we lived in were these flimsy houses that could have been, any of the wind could have brushed it away. And just like we were protected by the clouds, we commemorate that providence that protected us. We commemorate it by living the exact same way for 7 days. And it's the happiest time because we're living off of the blessing of God and the providence. What Sukkot is in a line is a celebration of Hashgacha. It's a celebration of divine providence. And that's why it's the happiest time of the year, because we recognize we've been blessed by God. This is the greatest point of the year. Sukkot comes to celebrate not a specific event, but the foundation of all events that we've had. It's the foundation, it's what underlies every single thing about the Jewish people. It's our relationship with God. And when we strive to put effort and to succeed at that relationship and to improve in that relationship and improve ourselves, then we can be satisfied, we can be happy over what we've accomplished and see that. Just as the Jews saw a cloud in the sky and fire in the sky, and that was their siman, that was their sign that God was protecting them, so to our sign that God is protecting us is through the blessing of the rains and through the blessings of the entire year of the protection that he provides. That is what Sukkot is all about. So as we sit in our Sukkah, we should be cognizant of that. We should remember what the divine blessings and the unique relationship that we have with God and what it encompasses, what we can expect from it, and the fact that it's dependent on us. And that's the entire year. So with that, I thank Rabbi Asher. I thank Ellie for putting this together. So thank you very much. Thank you for having me. It's amazing that the hundreds of people from the Richmond community that watched with us. It was absolutely incredible. And to everybody that tuned in on Facebook, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it. If you could always go back to Facebook and watch this if you're just tuning in late and see the whole shiur forever. It'll always be there.
Thank you, Rabbi Pilichowski. Really appreciate it. It's nice to see you. I remember, wasn't that long ago when we saw each other in person directly. One of the highlights of our trip from our trip to Israel in November 2019 was to your house and your gracious hospitality. I see some old friends here on Facebook I haven't seen for a while. Yeah, so hopefully we'll see each other again soon. And hopefully this pandemic will be behind us. A good moed. A lot of these ideas you taught me in 2002 when I was your pupil and still am. So thank you again and for your mentorship always, for your friendship to this community. This is now the third address to Richmond, at least the third, 3 different instances, 4th if you include the one in your house as well. So we look forward to more opportunities, and thank you very much for all you do for the Jewish people in the land of Israel and teaching Torah. Very much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Sameach.
Thanks so much.
Chag Sameach.